Today we're going to look at the pros and cons of living in Happy Valley, Oregon. Here are the things that you are going to want to know before you decide to make a move. Hey, what's going on everybody? My name is Tyler Gramson with Checkpoint Realty, your local real estate expert. Now before we begin, make sure to like and subscribe so you can stay up to date on all things Portland area real estate. A lot of these pros and cons come directly from our neighbors, our asking groups, Facebook groups, Nextdoor app, all these different places where our community gets together and discusses what they like, what they don't like about living in this community. So make sure you stick until the end so you can hear exactly what is being talked about in Happy Valley. So let's get right into it. One of the first things that gets brought up over and over again when I ask what people appreciate about Happy Valley are the parks, the outdoors, the recreation that we have. People just love it because the parks are very well maintained and they offer a lot of different activities like basketball, tennis, soccer, skateboarding, dog parks, just anything that you can think of that you would really appreciate from the outdoors. Happy Valley definitely offers it. And this is really evident when the weather is nice. The parks are absolutely slammed with people getting together to play games, to have picnics, just get-togethers, parties, whatever. If it's nice out, then people are out in these parks and they're definitely taking advantage of probably the most sought-after aspect of Happy Valley. Oregonians' love for the outdoors can never be stated enough. And Happy Valley offers you that kind of central location that can get you to all these places to make easy day trips. And it's just something that you're going to hear from anybody who's ever lived in this area. Now for our first con of living in Happy Valley. And this is directly related to something that is very commonly associated with Oregon and the Northwest, but especially the west side of Oregon, and that's the rain. We have a very, very wet climate. That's what makes it so green and beautiful in the spring, summer, and fall. And as a side note, if you're getting used to the rain and you choose to use an umbrella in Oregon, you very well may get looked down upon. I've lived in Oregon my entire life. The very first time that I used an umbrella was when I was 20 years old. My friend asked me to hold the umbrella while we were walking. And the very first person who came up to us in the pouring down rain was wearing a t-shirt and shorts. And he said, "Nice umbrella, bro," and kept walking. I haven't used an umbrella since. Okay, so I have used an umbrella a few times since, but just don't tell anybody. And on the flip side, another pro of living in Happy Valley is that between the rainy periods around March, April, May-ish, until October, the weather is absolutely incredible. We don't get the heat that the South sees. We don't get the humidity that the Southeast sees, like in Florida and Georgia, which is something that a lot of people try to escape moving from those areas. So overall, the weather is pretty nice when it's not pouring down rain. That's not to say that we don't have some very hot days. In fact, the summer has been pretty packed full of them. But it's just not something that we generally see so consistently. The second con of living in Happy Valley is just the cost of living here. We're looking at about 30% higher than the average cost of living around Oregon. And Oregon itself is already one of the more expensive states to live in. Now, Happy Valley specifically, healthcare is relatively affordable. However, if you're looking at entertainment, restaurants, housing, you're going to be paying quite a bit for it. Another benefit of living in Happy Valley are the schools. Happy Valley offers some of the better schools in the state in terms of both parent perceptions as well as educational outcomes such as graduation rates and acceptance into college. Contrasting to where I went to school in Astoria, Oregon, which is a great little community, but the schools did very little to prepare me for life after graduation, whether that was in the job market or in success in college. And on to the third con of living in Happy Valley, and this is something that I heard a a lot from the members of the community, and that's just that we are constantly in development of new housing. There's so much green space that I have seen over the last 4 years disappear in preparation for new development. Literally hundreds of houses have gone up just down the street from my house. And it's something that is definitely not gone unnoticed by people who have lived here for much of their lives. Now, all that development is for a reason, and it does lead me into my next pro of living in Happy Valley. And that's that there is very high demand for this area. That demand does a few things, such as creating more business, more housing opportunities, more employment, things that we all benefit from, things that we get to enjoy more. But it also leads to increased house appreciation. So if you own a house in the area, or if you're looking to buy, you can be comforted by the fact that the housing prices almost always increase year over year. In fact, my own house that we bought in 2019 has appreciated from about $450,000 to well over $570,000. Now, for my fourth con of living in Happy Valley, this is something else that was brought up quite a bit when I asked people what they appreciate and what they don't, and that's that we're very cramped in this area. And that has a lot to do with the new developments that are coming out. Developers like to put houses as close together as they can so that they can maximize their profits. So a lot of the neighborhoods that have been developed around here have gone kind of along those similar lines and just jam-packed as many houses in one area as possible, which has some benefit, but for people such as myself who grew up in the country on 40 acres, for a lot of people this probably isn't really a big issue, especially if you're from a bigger city or you're just used to suburban living. I myself came from the country living on 40 acres, so it's definitely something that I had to get used to. And if you're coming from a similar environment, it is definitely something that you have to consider when you're looking to live in Happy Valley. I'm going to switch up this last part of the final 5 pros and cons of living in Happy Valley and jump right to a con so we can end on a good note. So the 5th and final con of living in Happy Valley are the HOAs. Because there are so many little communities within Happy Valley, there are a lot of HOAs covering the area. And there are, of course, benefits to having some of them, but they are all operated individually and they have different goals in mind. My wife, for example, used to live in an area of which the HOAs were always on her about the color of her lawn, or if any paint was chipping on her house, they would be immediately on her, sending her letters saying that she needs to fix it right away. So this was something that was brought up a lot by people that I've spoken to, and they were particularly passionate about their disdain for living under the regimes of these HOAs. And for the final pro of living in Happy Valley, it's just the sense of community and the community itself. It's something that others really wanted to instill upon me and wanted me to make certain that I brought up in this video, is that we are very community oriented. From a crime perspective, Happy Valley is about 50% below the national average, 70% below in violent crime, and we do not have the same sort of issues with violence and overrunning of our park and drug use that our neighboring cities certainly have. And that's not to say that things don't happen. There are certainly porch pirates. If you look at next door, that's a very common thing for people to bring up. And when I was at Starbucks the other day, I did have a woman try to run over my face. But overall, we don't suffer from the same sort of ailments that our nearby cities certainly are suffering from, especially in these last couple of years. Something that was just really impressed upon me by by those that I spoke to, and something that I have experienced myself on many occasions, is that when there's a need from a neighbor, that people are going to come out and help. But I can't tell you how many occasions that I've just been in the middle of trying to do something, and I'll have just a neighbor who's walking by come out and say, "Hey, do you need help with that?" And it's just something that is really quite amazing, and something that I have really appreciated since living in this community for the past 4 years. There are my 5 pros and cons of living in Happy Valley. Comment below if I missed anything, and make sure to catch me on the next video.